Kenya must be resolute and steadfast, because this administration has become very intolerant to divergent opinion, and it is brutal with anybody who doesn't toe the line, and we are slowly sliding into dictatorship and a police state, a country of abductions and extrajudicial killing. This administration cannot take dissent from anybody. That is why a popular deputy president elected by the people had to be impeached and removed from office because he's not a yes man, and he has refused to join the praise and worship choir, and he is standing by the people. This administration is intolerant to an extent that when Gen Zs rose to speak their mind, they were butchered and massacred in cold blood. This is a government now that abducts anybody who dares question anything in this country, despite us being a democracy. The culture of abductions, we have perfected it to an extent. Even neighboring countries are asking us to help them in abducting people. And a Ugandan leader was abducted, and the Kenyan government was saying it doesn't know. Yet the Ugandan government the following day was thanking the people of the government of Kenya for the cooperation. This is a government that is intolerant even to the church. The Catholic bishops, PCA Church, Anglican Church, Evangelicals, Pentecostals, even the Akorino sect that has never had a press conference since inception, are saying, oh, it's not well. You have found pastors now being abducted. Leaders. You saw the senator of Laikipia being forced to resign as commissioner of the Parliamentary Service Commission because he voted against my impeachment. Leaders are being threatened. They will be removed from committees. The people of Kenya must be resolute, and they must not agree to buy fear. The political persecution of the 90s during the Nyayo era are back. The police state is now activated. I feel embarrassed because in Kasarani, I told the people that they shall be free to say what they want, and they will not be talking through WhatsApp because spies are listening to their phones. Now they're even listening to WhatsApp. People have to look for other platforms. It's very intolerant. Again, there is suppression of alternative view, and I really want our administration to accept that we are in the 21st century, to abandon the culture of abductions and forced disappearances. In fact, much as the president has been very unfair to me, as a Christian, sometimes I feel for him.
He said that twice, 3 times, anapelekwa kwa bush, alafu anaulizana, na hapa iko sawa. Yani hapo amumalizie hapo. Maximum fear and the terrorism.
Thank you, Your Excellency and colleagues who are here, and members of the Fourth Estate. I hope I'll be able to give the story without being emotional. But I want to break it into 2 parts. And part 1 is at the burial the day before and at the burial of Erastus. The day before the burial, Rick G, the former deputy president, called me and he asked me to represent him in that funeral committee with 50,000 shillings. And he also said that he would attend that burial. So when I went there, I found so many people, roughly about 300 of them. And when I spoke to them, because they gathered, I spoke about what Rigiji had told me, pole, kwa familia, and then I've also brought my pole. And then I told them, for what Rigiji is doing in our community or our area, I would be pleased if Rick G himself, Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka, who is here, somebody like Matiang'i, brother Eugene, and the rest of them, would join hands and liberate this country from what we are going through. The people who are there were very excited, extremely excited, even to hear that Rick G was going to come. But more importantly, when they heard that there is intention to bring all of us together so that we can liberate our country. That was the day before. And so I told Rick G, watu wamepokea vizuri, na wamesema unaweza kuja. And therefore, the next day he called me and asked me, can you wait for me in an appointed place so that we can go together? And we did so. And he came and we went. I'm trying to make it short. And on reaching there, we found very excited crowd. Because I can tell you, on our arrival, an announcement that we have arrived, the crowd went wild. They were cheering. They welcomed us. The MC also did the same. We got a place where to sit. But when we sat, I observed one thing that was unique. But the area MP, one John Kirago Chege, had declined to sit where the VIP tent was, and he decided to go and sit where the Akorino bishops were. And I asked, why would it happen? I just asked somebody. And they said he was offered and he declined. And so we sat in and listened to the people who were speaking, and then we listened to the sermon. Everything was looking okay. But at one point, when the bishop, the main bishop, was preaching, there was sudden influx of young. I broke my speech into two. One, and I told the people, I'll give message of condolence, which I did. The second, I'll tell you why I will talk about Rick G. So the first part went on well. Then I came to the second part, and I started talking about how Rick G had come and be campaigned against me. However, I was now sharing a platform with him because we had decided to bury our interest in the greater interest of the community and the region. And as I started talking about Rick G, there was a huge surge of youth who came specifically to the VIP tent. And I noted that VIP tent was like a target. So I was speaking and looking at them and trying to bring peace, telling them I'm peaceful, everybody who is here is peaceful. And they said, don't tell us about Rick G. We would have voted for you, but he told us not to vote for you. I told them, that's fine. Even me, I would even probably not speak to him. But now that we have a common problem, we need to move together. They now started shouting back, said, no, we are not going to allow it. The first person to shout that, I told him, just relax. I explained, then you tell me whether what I've said is okay. But another person, a second one, shouted back. That event was somebody who pulled out the support of the tent. In that tent, I'm seeing now, when I saw the tent was collapsing on him, I kind of stopped. Because I wondered, where am I going? A visitor is almost going down with the tent. But they pushed me out. Some of them are here. And of course, Rick G had his own security. They took him to the car, and hell broke loose. They ran after us. And I want to make this clear that they had intentions. Because for the first time, I ran frantically for 2 kilometers.
You look like a marathon.
And worse still is because it was downhill. So by the time I got where I was going, my knees were aching. Yeah, it's not a laughing matter, but we can laugh about it. And then at one time again we got onto the road, and then we saw those guys coming. Then they said, my guys told me, you know, those guys are carrying machetes, they are carrying pangas, some nut rungus. So the best thing you can do, tusipite barabara, when they see they can't get you, wataingia kwa boda boda, alafu watafika mahali tuko. And indeed I did that. And therefore we got into one of the houses. I want to believe he's a cousin of Baba Yao, because he so introduced himself. And when we got there, he told us, you are not going to pass through the actual path. Mutapitia kwa majani, mutapitia kwa mahindi, na mutapitia kwa nipia. So two guys came from the front one. They opened the rear door. I was seated with the area MCA. I had my phone, and I'm saying that because the area MCA's phone had fallen off. Nilikuwa namuuliza, where is it? He said, I cannot trace it. Tukapiga ikawa inalia lakini haichukuli. Akaniambia imeanguka huko kwa kiwanja. Sasa yangu nilikuwa naye. And when they took us into the first vehicle, a few meters, like 100, they stopped again. Both of them very close range. And they pulled him out into the rear car. And then a guy came from behind and I was sandwiched. McHugh. All these guys were hooded. And I said this because Palembele, I spoke about somebody who was hooded in the barrio. And now, these guys who are inside the Subaru, all of them, including the driver, are hooded. They have a mask. And they have, one had a cape and the others had, I think, baklava. Now, one of the things I was told is, lazima utatii na utakaa hapo, na tukikuuliza, I'm saying this because they were speaking in Swahili, na tukikuuliza kitu ujibu. Umesikia? The only time I was allowed to check sideways, because later they told me, usiangalie kando, uangalie mbele, is only when they asked, unaona hii ni nini? Na pande hiyo ingine ni nini? Those were shotguns. I've been a chairman of security, I know them. Now, one of the significant things is, nimeona they have shotguns. The numbers, the vehicles don't have number plates. And the guy in front has a walkie-talkie. So my conclusion was, who would be like this, driving a vehicle like this? Having seen what Gen Z was going through, nikajua I am in for it. And so I said I will answer. And the long and short of it, the questions were telling. One question I was asked immediately is whether I love myself. And I said yes. The second thing they asked is, do you have a wife? And I said yes. Do you love her? And I said yes. Tunaenda tu. Do you have children? Yes. How many? Nikawambia I have 4 children. 2 boys, 2 girls. Nikaenda kueleza, you are talking too much. You must answer after you are asked a question. So nikasema ndio saa. And therefore they asked, do you have these children? Yes. Wanafanya kazi? Ndio. Unawapenda? Ndio. Haya. Then they kept quiet. Tukafika kwa that place called Flyover. They took the road towards, I think it goes to Thika. Yes. And it passes through some forest. Wakanyamaza, that road is rough. And those guys can drive very roughly. Nilikuwa nasikia pupupu unagonga gongwa tu. And you know now, since they are holding their shotguns here, ikitingika hivi unasikia ni kama you have been shot. So I'm saying my last prayers anyway. You don't know what is happening. And tukafika mahali kuna msitu na kuna stinging nettles. In Kikuyu we call it thafai. I don't know whether that's the right word. Yes. So when we reached there, One of them asked, hapa ni sawa? Akasema hapana. That the other one went. So we went down and they got onto the Mahiu Road, and then we took off towards Narok. Now towards Narok, we got into a place, kuna mahali hakuna manyumba, but there are some thickets. They stopped there. That was the third time. And said, hapa ndio mwisho. So I didn't know whether ni mwisho wa safari ama ni mwisho yangu. Kasema hapa ni sawa kabisa. So I asked, mlikuwa mnataka nifanye aje? Because mimi sijaongea kitu mbaya. Mkiangalia vile niliongea pale kwa mazishi, nyamaza. Sisi tuko kazi. They said, keep quiet, we are doing our work. Kasema asante. Even bad things wakisema nasema asante. Then all of a sudden tena wakapinduka. And from that point towards Mahiu, there was intense discussion between them and somebody. Ule alikuwa mbele ndio alikuwa anauliza wanasema kilo Charlie Bravo something, vitu kama hizo. I know it's some coded word and mostly is used by police. Now having been a chair of security, I know that. And maybe other people they use. But now I'm convinced that hizi magari hazina namba, watu wako na guns, wamejihud na wanaongea kilo Charlie, and I saw what happened to the agency. Then I knew I was obviously with those kind of people who are molesting peace-loving Kenyans just to stifle democracy. And so they took off talking, very coded, extremely coded language, na wakaja towards Nairobi, branched off. In fact, kuna mahali walipitia wrong side, pale ndio waingie Southern Bypass. And they got into Southern Bypass. They started driving slowly. There was a conversation that was intense with the coded words. And then they said, unajua tunaweza kukua. Now, when they said this, and I knew that road goes towards Ngong Forest, I knew my life is over. Nikasema ndio, but hakuna kitu kibaya mimi nimefanya. Na hakuna mtu nimetusi. And so, tukaja tu hivyo, then they started speeding. And that conversation, finally how it ended along bypass was, yes sir, copied. The last word was, yes sir, copied. After copied, brakes, zikapigwa brakes, gari, I was alone. I never saw, I don't know how we lost the other one. But you know, I was told to face front. So sijui kama ingine inakuja ama ikuji, sijui, I'm only seeing up in between this guy and the driver. And therefore, along, when they said, yes sir, copied, wakapiga brakes, gari kasimama, they told me, toka umbwa wewe. And so I got out in the middle of nowhere. Mimi sikuwa na nyumba, sikuwa na nini. Nikajua sasa it's me and my God and prayer.
What time was it?
I can't tell time because they had actually, maybe I forgot to say, they had told me to switch off my phones. And I had switched them off. And I couldn't, because now you have been put somewhere, it's dark. You don't want to attract the attention of somebody, probably, aona mwangaza ya simu. You want also to move in the dark somehow. And so I didn't. So they put me on the side going towards Langata. And I thought they wanted to shoot me. So the moment they moved, I crossed on to the other side. And I went kwa ditch. Nikapitia sasa hiyo kama ni mtaro. Walking and running and checking whether any vehicle is coming. I guess it was between 600 or 800 meters. I got onto the road that branches off from Karen. I started running towards Karen in the middle of the road. And that's why I met with one border fellow. I almost, nilikuwa na karibu ni...
Na msivunje moyo na wale watu mnaona wakishangilia Kondele. We have only one problem in Kenya, and that problem is poverty. They are misusing our youth because of poverty. These youths wanamaliza form 4, wanamaliza college, they cannot get jobs. They cannot even get money to come and buy an Uber. So most of them are in the ghettos. We are in Haiti trying to solve a problem, but that problem is coming to Kenya. Because 80% of the Kenyan population is below the age of 35. And most of them don't have jobs. That is why wanaiba simu. Ndio maana wana participate kwa carjackings. Wamewapatia nyinyi shida na wamenipea mimi shida. Because these people don't have opportunities. We must show direction. And nobody should tell us that we are too young to lead. I am 28 years old and I'm not too young to lead.
Allah. Allah.
We are not too young to lead. We know what our country needs. And luckily we are not tribal. And luckily we are not corrupt.